Hello, I'm Mandi McLeod. Welcome to Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. Coming up in the show, competitors complain Fonterra farmers are paid too much in the latest row over milk pricing. We ask, why shouldn't they be paid for their investment? Honey laundering. We look at what's got the honey industry in a buzz. And a strong demand for kiwi fruit has prompted many new varieties to be released. We get the latest from our kiwi fruit expert. Joining me today is Doug Brown, a kiwi fruit grower from Opotiki, and Peter Buckley, the chair of the Waikato Regional Council. Welcome, guys.
Hi, Mandy.
Hi, Mandy. How are you?
Very, very well. Peter, in an independent report commissioned by Fonterra's competitors, it's alleged that $195 million of cost is being passed on to consumers and competitors by Fonterra, and that Fonterra is paying their shareholders far too much for the milk. What do you think?
I don't agree with that, Mandy, at all, because I look at the cost of production that's on my farm or anybody's farm, and I've seen costs, just the cost of production without paying interest or paying capital back to about $5 to $6 a kilogram. So, we need that money to actually be able to do all our environmental work that we've got to do on our farms to meet the rules and conditions that my council put on us. So, I think that really it's where things have got to. It's the cost of production out there now and the inflation that's actually come about. Admittedly that there's cost drivers that are out there, but I think we've all got to be fair and everybody's got to make a dollar, because as you see at the field days, those farmers down there were spending up pretty large down at the field days, so the money goes round.
Isn't it also true, and Doug, jump in if you will, that Fonterra is owned by shareholders? So
Definitely.
The farmers that supply the milk are shareholders to Fonterra.
Yes.
So surely, as investors in a company, they deserve to get paid as much as they can because they've set that company up.
Well, we've set the company up. We've invested our money in it, or our forefathers have invested that money into the company, and it is a huge company. It's a global company, and it's exports to all over the world. And if we didn't have that investment there, we wouldn't be out there in the marketplace, and maybe we wouldn't be getting the returns. And the quality of our products that we're actually producing is really world renowned.
So, Doug, do you think the issue here is that this independent report is being commissioned by three of Fonterra's competitors?
Yeah, you'd have to question the validity of some of their comments, and I agree with Peter. I mean, I don't think there'd be too many Fonterra shareholders complaining about an increased payout, and I don't really see what's wrong with primary industry actually making profits. I mean, good on them.
And isn't that really the issue, that we should be paying for food what it is worth to grow, and potentially even on the export market?
Yeah, it is, because look at our people outside in the cities, and that they all demand a better environmental standard. So we've actually got to be able to achieve those things. We've actually got to be able to achieve a reliable income to do that. And I just look at that. Some of the money that I've spent on environmental practices on my farm's huge. And I might be in a different situation to some farmers, but it does cost a lot of money to do some of the work that we've got to do. And
I think the point you made earlier, Peter, is really valid, that the profit margin that dairy farmers gets squeezed every time there's a payout increase. The people that kick us for having, a higher payout are kicking with one hand and the hand out is the other, saying we want more of that. Is that...
Returns go up and prices go up, but when returns come down, prices don't always come down as fast.
Well, we get squeezed at that end too, so it's a really good merry-go-round in some ways. But people out there have got to realise that when you look at the agricultural sector out there, and that's the whole agriculture sector of New Zealand, is the backbone of the country. It actually makes this country tick.
Is it every dollar that's invested, $10? Every dollar earned by agriculture is worth $10 to New Zealand? Is that
in the fiscal economy?
The fiscal economy, yeah. So that's pretty huge.
And we are all interrelated, because I know when...
Well, speak for yourself, Doug, in Opotiki, but...
I mean, in our industries, because when Fonterra's price went up, I'm in kiwi fruit, but overnight all my fertiliser costs doubled virtually. So when one sector does well, it has a flow-on effect to other sectors. In terms of
costs and things like that.
Yep.
Doug, I understand we've got some new varieties of kiwi fruit coming out. What can you tell us about them, and why do we need them?
Zespri currently commercialising 3 new varieties, two new gold varieties and a new sweet green.
So that would make 5 varieties in the marketplace in total. We've got green and gold currently.
Yes, so you have a green category and a gold category,
Yes.
but the 2 new gold varieties will dovetail into the gold category. Primarily they're around increasing the sales window. So one of the new varieties is an earlier maturing gold, so that allows us to get into the market a little bit earlier, and the other one actually stores a bit longer, so it just allows us to expand that selling window on gold. And the new green variety is a sweet green. It's going to allow us to capture a different segment of the consumer market. For example, in Japan, our predominant buyer of traditional green Hayward kiwi fruit is 50 plus.
Yep, so you're trying to get into a younger market with a sweeter taste.
So the new sweet green appeals to the younger consumer, and we hope to grow the market that way.
Because that's really interesting, because in a recent trip to China over there, and when you look at the market that you're serving, and you've got the Haywards and the gold variety, those people over there said to us that they'd like to see a broader expanse of kiwi fruit coming in to meet the different market trends, from the young people to the older ones. So that's really good, because I understand, they've come from China originally, but we're well renowned in New Zealand for producing really good kiwi fruit.
And it's a fantastic industry too. Having one, apart from Australia, just having one single marketing point, I think has contributed to your success, doesn't it?
Gives us huge strength in the marketplace. I've been fortunate enough to be in some of the overseas markets over the last couple of years, and it does give us some real strength in the marketplace. I've been around long enough to remember the multi-exporter days of way back. And now I'm convinced that the single point of entry offshore is of huge value to New Zealand growers.
Doug, while we're talking about single point of entry, I believe that the New Zealand Biosecurity Act is looking to change the way honey can be imported into New Zealand, and we've got this term called honey laundering, which is where honey is sold from countries other than point of origin and is sold under, like for example, an Australian label, that honey can be brought in from other countries, and they're looking to bring that in. Now, is it varroa mite that they're worried about coming in with that?
Most beekeepers are really worried about European foul brood disease.
Foul brood disease, yes. Yep. And now, will that impact on your crop potentially, or your industry potentially, because of pollination, which comes from bees?
Oh yeah, I mean we're totally reliant on bees for pollination. I mean we can artificially pollinate, obviously, but the bulk of the pollination is done with honeybees. So any sort of biosecurity risk to bees has a flow-on effect to us, without a doubt.
So Peter, just quickly, we've got yet another biosecurity risk. What is going on?
Well, that really concerns me, that we've got another potential biosecurity risk that's coming in, and I just wonder whether politics actually overtakes the sensibility out there. And when we look at where we are, and I look around the world about hive collapses and that European foul brood and those sorts of things, do we really want them in here? Shouldn't we be actually protecting them to a bigger degree? And just looking at it, like we got a free trade with China, and I'm not trying to get off the subject, but the only reason that we actually have we're allowed to get in there as long as we have a direct route from it. But if it's coming in from Australia, there's other honey coming in, and we can't actually find the point source of it.
And that's the main concern, really, isn't it? Thanks, guys. Coming up after the break, the 2011 Mystery Creek Field Days were a roaring success with farmers and townies alike. We explore the highlights and ask why this year was so big. Wild animals, possums in particular, are responsible for about 70% of new herd infections of TB in at-risk areas. But is 1080 the only answer for eradication? And with 4 men standing for the chair of Federated Farmers, we ask what attributes and leadership qualities are needed in a successful candidate. All this and more after the break. Welcome back to Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. 1080, it kills with no cure. And has the industry divided over whether it's the devil or the saviour of the agricultural industry? Peter, what are your views on 1080? Is it our only viable alternative?
At the present time, it's one of the best effective, poisons out there to do that. The concern out there that I'd have is the way that it's actually administered. Where it's actually how it's applied, and there's a lot of people out there that are concerned about getting into waterways and things like that. But I look at it and I look at trapping and the other methods out there, and some of the country that we've actually got to go into to actually do that is, virtually inaccessible. And, I know people say to me we should get the unemployed people and all those people out there, but when you're carrying 100 kilos of traps into some of those bushes out there, and
there's a bit of skill required, isn't there? It's not just something you can send.
And grunt.
And grunt, yeah. But you look at it, Mandy, and we talk about killing possums, but there's other pests out there that we need to get to. Like there's stoats, there's rats, there's mice, and those things. So the 1080 is just not killing possums; it's actually killing some of the other things. And admittedly, there's some biokills from it. But when you look out there, there's actually more people die from it having overdoses of Panadol in a year than what there is of dogs. The 8 dogs that we have. And dogs will eat rat poison too. So there's actually more dogs killed by rat poison than 1080. So you've got to take these things in perspective about what's really there. But if we could find something else that could actually, do the job, I'd be all for it.
Peter and Doug, I want to bring you in on this point. The issue I see it, like you, Peter, is the application of it. And I guess when we see these big aerial drops, it's a very emotive thing, isn't it, to think that we're actually getting all of the other, not just killing the pests, we're getting the deer and we're getting the pigs and all these things, and we're seeing the footage of these horrific deaths. What do you think, Doug? What do you?
Yeah, well, it's a difficult one, Mandy, because we had the scientific report came out last week, and it's do you believe the science? So on one hand you've got the emotion, and on the other hand you've got the science, and which one do you really believe? And like Peter says, a lot of these areas are quite remote, and perhaps trapping isn't always an option.
Just an example of what we did in the Waikato region. Only 5% of our of what we do in the Waikato region is actually done by aerial 1080. The rest of it's all done by ground or trapping or other methods. So we're not using a huge, we use it, but in other methods. But we only 5% of it's actually flown on in the Waikato region.
In the article that was reported in the Straight Furrow and with the Environment Commissioner's report, I guess the way it read, though, was that 1080 was being sanctioned at a really high level as being the only thing. And do you think the way that potentially these issues are being talked about, because it is such an emotive issue, that we need a bit more clarity around that?
I think there should be some more clarity around that. 1080 is 1080 is certainly been there, but prolificum is another product that we're using, and other things like that we're out there. So, 1080 is 1080 is an emotive word.
Oh, it's a red rag to a bull, isn't it? Yeah. Really, yeah.
But you look at it though, Mandy, and we talk about in the Waikato, we're down to 2 herds only with TB in now. So and a lot
I hear the possum guys complaining because they can't kill any possums. So
you see at a meeting last night, Mandy, I was at one, and Doc actually allow people to go into the bush in the kaimais, and there's they're getting their catches down to 10-15%, but sometimes they actually contribute to get the biodiversity right. You've got to get it down to 5. So trapping has got a method.
It's getting the right applications now,
and the right balance.
And the right balance. Now, the Mystery Creek Field Days, roaring success. It had the title of Breaking Barriers to productivity. Doug, what are your thoughts on what barriers we've got to productivity, and how do we break them?
Yeah, when I was thinking about breaking barriers, my initial thought is it's probably better not to have the barrier there in the first place. I know for myself, some of the barriers like the RMA and on a wider context for farming, there's things like the ETS, and you do wonder how that's going to affect on the profitability and sustainability of pastoral agriculture. Yeah.
Peter, what do you think? There was a leaders' debate about it but I'm very keen to get your thoughts.
Well, certainly, we've had concerns around the RMA and the way that we've actually got to use it within the council. We're all for, and we see the government actually looking at the reform number 2 bill coming through on the RMA, and let's hope that they can get some, decent reforms into that to make it so it's easier for, users to actually get out there to do that. Otherwise, for us to do a plan change, often they're taking 10 years and about $10 to $15 million to get a plan change. And this is ridiculous.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's crazy. There's got to be a better method to get there.
Because when I see barriers to productivity, my first thought is that it's us, it's our glass ceilings, that productivity change will come when people feel uncomfortable enough to make a change to alter their productivity methods. But I was at the field days and I didn't really see a lot of productivity barrier conversations. What were your thoughts? What were your highlights? What were your...
Well, I never, I was at the field days for 3 days too, Mandy, and I didn't, there's such a buoyancy out there in the market out there at the present time. People are wanting to start, they can see the good, the
light at the end of the tunnel,
the light at the end of the tunnel, and they want to get out there and get on, and that came across at our stand at the regional council as we just want to get on and do something, but also make sure that we actually do look after the environment. And there's got to be a balance there between the economy and the environment.
Oh, absolutely. And balance is the right word, isn't it? Because if we flip one way or the other, we're seen as... Doug, what about you? You were in the Zespri tent?
Yeah, I was in the Zespri tent for a while, and the Fonterra tent. I think the Fonterra...
Is that where all the free lunches were?
The Fonterra tent had better lunch, but...
I'm pleased you're getting something out of me, Doug.
The field days is probably not specifically geared to horticulture, but it's always good to have a look at what's going on and whether you can transfer some of the ideas from agriculture through to your own sector. And it is really, I agree with Peter, it's really good to see the enthusiasm and the vibrancy of farming.
The buoyancy. Peter, a topic dear to your own heart, I'm sure. The Federated Farmers Chair-elect. What leadership qualities, skills and attributes should we be looking for in our successful candidate? Well, and Doug, you're coming up after this, so you better have your answer ready too.
I find it really interesting. This is the first time that they've had for years, have 4 candidates standing for the presidency of the Federated Farmers. And one of the things is I've spoken to some of them, and one of the things I've sort of extolled to them is I think you've got to build relationships. You've actually got to get out there and to find solutions, not just sort of bang heads against the walls and say this is what you should do. You actually should be finding solutions. You've got to have a really the person at the top's got to be balanced. Look at both sides of the argument to see where they are. They should be actually out there. The rural sector out there needs a good advocacy for farming, or, for all farmers out there. And, those people have got to get out and about to see, meet all the ministers, meet the industry, meet all the key players, whether on the left or the right of the political field, because, they've all got a right to say, and even go and talk to the people in the cities.
Oh, even that. Crikey. Yeah. Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Peter. I think they need a big picture, be able to see the big picture, and I think they really need to be an effective lobbyist in government.
So the thing that concerns me the most when I look at Federated Farmers and the history of people that have been involved, my biggest concern is that the radicalism and that radical few may end up swaying.
Well, that's what concerns me, is that you need to have the person at the top as a balanced person. You don't want a radical person sitting at the top, because all of a sudden all you do is build barriers, and that person, hopefully those Federated Farmers have sorted out there who's going to be there, and it's a really interesting lineup of people who have actually put their name forward.
Oh, tell me about it. Well, we watched the space with interest. Thanks, guys. Coming up after the break, we asked Doug and Peter what's got them hopping. Will it be a rant? Or will it be a rave? Stay with us. Welcome back to Straight Talk. Time now for our weekly rant or rave. Doug, what have you got for us?
Well, I suppose I've got a bit of a rant. As I mentioned before, Mandy, I've been offshore looking at offshore markets. And I think when you get offshore, you realise how small New Zealand really is in the global marketplace. We're a small trading island nation in the bottom of the world. But we're also a nation of knockers. And I really struggle with when one sector of the economy does well, instead of embracing that and being proud of it and encouraging it, we seem to just give it a kicking. ETS is a classic example. Domestic milk prices are another example. I just wish that we could encourage and appreciate the rural sector for the contribution it does make to this economy.
That's a really good point. Thanks, Doug. Pete, what have you got for us?
Well, I suppose it's more a rave, but along the same lines as Doug, is that I look at what the rural sector's done for New Zealand and how it's actually getting out there. And I look at the positiveness out there of the rural sector at the present time. And, all the farmers that I talk to, lately, this season have just been really positive about where the country's going to. And I realise that it takes time for it to all go through all the sectors, but I can see that it's actually starting to progress through the smaller towns and come up into the bigger cities. So, to me, I think New Zealand's a great place to live, and it's a bit like Doug was saying, the food that we grow here can only feed about 50 million people in the world, and yet we need to go really good quality food so we get the best price for it. And that's, this is what we're really renowned for. We've got a clean green image, and being in China, they do extol the virtues of that. We have some knockers on there that say, God, our water's not this or that. Well, I can look back in diaries from 1859 and look at the quality of the water in the Waikato River, and they describe the water the same colour, a light green in colour, and the Waipa a light brown in colour. So, I think we've got to extol the virtues of what we've got, and we've got a great country, we've got a great culture, so I don't see why we've got so many knockers knocking us.
That's a very good point. Well, I'm going to follow on a little bit from that because I want to talk about biosecurity. Every single time I do my research for the show, there is an issue that has got biosecurity at the bottom of it. And I just don't get why we're lapsing our biosecurity regulations. As Dougie said, we're an island nation. We've got the perfect opportunity to keep our country clean, pest-free, disease-free, I don't understand why MAF is trying to take this away from us. I just don't get it.
Well, neither do I, Mandy. I don't understand why they don't do that. But one of the issues that I see with biosecurity is that all our goods are virtually packed in containers, and they're not packed on a wharf anymore. One time, all the goods were gone to a wharf and they were packed on a ship there, so you actually had control of the biodiversity. And you look at in the farming sector and in the horticulture sector, you got varroa mite, all these things that have come in. We don't know how they've come in. We've got clover flea, all those clover root weevil, all those things have, and you can contribute them from containerisation, I'd say, and we aren't getting the processes right out in where our products are coming from. But
isn't it more than that? When I look at Rotorua Airport, Hamilton Airport, even Auckland Airport now, I'd be willing to bet, and I would never do it, I'd be willing to bet that I could come in from the States with a ham sandwich and get through.
Well, that astounded me because last time I came through Auckland Airport, I wasn't X-rayed.
There was no sniffer dogs last time I came through from LAX.
Yeah, the Rotorua Airport's a classic example. NZKGI has been really concerned about that. You're bringing people in from Queensland direct to Rotorua. One fruit fly could take the whole industry out.
Yeah.
And there's no MAF controls at the border.
No.
It's just astounding.
And what's worse than that, if that did actually happen, if a fruit fly was discovered, my understanding is that if it was the kiwi fruit industry that was at risk and had to do a clean-up, the kiwi fruit industry would have to pay the entire clean-up costs. It's not a government issue anymore.
Correct.
So how is it that our politicians are not taking agriculture seriously?
Well, I think, Mandy, and I look out there and I look at likes of Auckland. Auckland's got 37 MPs, I understand. 37 or 38 MPs come from Auckland, which is an urban base. And I look around the country and we're not getting, we haven't got a lot of high profile MPs from the country, you know, and we're actually having to extol the virtue. You know, there's lots of organisations having to push for all these things out there, and that's where, you know, I see federated farmers should be pushing for, you know, to bring up some people through the through the rural sector, you know, some prominent people to put their names forward for some of these places.
I think what you're saying is we need really strong, positive and proactive agricultural, rural, horticultural leadership in our country, which I see is lacking. That wraps up our latest edition of Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. And talking about great rural leaders, I'd like to thank my guests Doug Brown and Peter Buckley. And thanks to you too for watching. Remember to check out my blog online at country99tv.co.nz. I love hearing from you. I'll catch you next week, and in the meantime, keep on talking straight.